there, welcome to a brand new episode of BoxTalks. Today is an episode I'm personally excited about because I feel it's a chat with a model athlete. I speak to Kieren D'Souza today. If you haven't heard of his name, he's an ultra marathon and a trail runner, an endurance athlete essentially. I'll quickly give you a list of some things he's achieved and then I'll tell you what we're going to be talking about. In 2016, he won the La Ultra 111 kilometers course, and he also set a record for that distance. Completed, and I believe is the only Indian to have completed the Spartathlon. Did that in 2016, came 98th in the Trail World Championships in 2018. Once again, the first Indian to have moved into the top 100. And recently, an achievement of his that's been in the news is his remarkable ascent of Friendship Peak. It's the fastest known time from Manali to Friendship Peak and back, 11 hours, 45 minutes and 50 seconds. There's a really cool video out about that. You really should go and check it out. We don't talk much about these specific achievements, but rather today's interview is focused on Kieren's process of dealing with failure, dealing with the times that things didn't go right, when his expectations were really broken, and how he managed to convert these negative, sometimes traumatic experiences into fuel for positive performance, which is an aspect that I think is crucial to a high-functioning athlete. And Kieren echoes that in every way. If you meet him, he's a very approachable, warm, friendly person. He's got that fine-tuned discipline of a performance athlete. So we go a little bit into this aspect, and hopefully that gives you insight into how he's become who he is. Another aspect that he was really keen on talking about, and he wanted to be really open about this, is the infrastructure and the network around sponsorship. There's some really useful information in today's interview. For example, who do you contact if you want to become a sponsored athlete? Can you make a living out of it? Do you get paid, or is it just product exchanges, what we otherwise just call free gear? How Kieren has journeyed the past 5 years as a sponsored athlete, what his different approaches are, how much he feels an athlete needs to make in order to live comfortably. We talk actual numbers and not just vague terms. So I think if you're considering going full-time into any sport, this is an interview that should be particularly useful. And if you aren't, it is still insight into a remarkable young talent in the country. So, BoxTalks with Kieren D'Souza. Here we go. Kieren, thank you so much for choosing to come on. And yeah, man, this is a conversation I'm quite excited about. I mean, apart from the fact that I know you personally, I feel there's some topics that we're going to discuss today that is just generally going to be pretty valuable to the larger community. So thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for, inviting me to have a chat with you. I have heard some of your previous interviews, the one with Conrad, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to be on this, being interviewed by you. So yeah.
It's great, man. So I want to start. I'm excited too. Sorry for the strange pause in the middle, but I'm genuinely happy about this conversation. All right. So for the sake of context, I want to actually get started a little bit with your childhood. Can you give us some sort of picture of what your childhood was like? I know you were part of an army family. So where were you born? How was growing up and so on?
Yeah. So my dad's still in the Air Force. He has a few years from retirement still. So I grew up in many places all over India, traveling with my dad every 2-3 years. And, so I was born in Chhattisgarh in Bilaspur, and the first 2 years or so of my life it was in Jodhpur in Rajasthan, and then been all over the place: Rajasthan, Gujarat, Punjab, Maharashtra, Karnataka, where I studied, and now Manali. So yeah, I have been all over the place. And when somebody asks me where I'm from, it's usually pretty hard for me to pinpoint and say where I'm from, because I feel like I'm from everywhere. So yeah.
I can imagine, because if it's one thing if you've spent maybe 15 years in one place and then 2 years, and 3 more years elsewhere, but I think you've spent relatively even chunks in many of these places.
Yes, yeah. The longest I've probably spent now is Manali. So I'm from Manali now.
Well, that's where I've seen you the most. And like,
Yeah.
I think, have I even met you outside Manali? Maybe in Delhi
No,
once or
no,
so, but no, I think
no.
only in Manali. We've
Just
only ever
Manali.
interacted
Yeah.
in Manali. So, yeah, we were talking about your childhood, or rather you were, and I wanted to get a sense of the role that sport played in it. Were you very sporty and active, or what was it like?
So yeah, like I guess for any kid pre the internet computer sort of era, we all played out and were in the mud and all the time, right? So it was the same for me. I grew up playing a lot in and everywhere I went, right? Like so, played a lot. Not anything organized as such for the initial years of my childhood, but later on, probably once I was in class 7, 8 or so, I started playing a lot of football. Played for school and some football clubs in the boarding school that I was in, and then I got into a little bit of basketball in college and a little bit of multiple sports. I was into a bit of swimming, a bit of badminton, a bit of everything till class 12, first year of college. That sort of timeline. It's only first year of college in Bangalore when running became sort of a important part of my life. Before that, running was never as a sport.
How? How did that happen?
So for me in Bangalore, basically when I shifted to college, college is not about physical activity and sports. It's all about boozing and chilling out and enjoying life. But for me, for some reason, I was not able to play team sports. So there was no basketball or football things that I was sort of pursuing before I came to college. So running sort of became something that I could do on my own, independent of a team of people. I could just get out and run. And it was my first race was an inter-college race, and it was a 12K. So a friend of mine from Missouri, he trained me for it. He was like, you know what, let's both of us go and run together and race together, and I'll teach you about running. So I was like, all right, man, I trust you. You take me, whatever you tell me, I'll do that. So yeah, that's how it started. And I ended up training for a couple of months and did my first 12K, which was very, very bad. Very bad.
I wanted to talk about, actually, much of the stuff I wanted to talk to you about today was the bad stuff and how you deal with it. But
Yeah.
um, at that point, the first time you ran a race, what did you feel? Was there any sort of connection? Did you see yourself wanting to do this for longer, or did you just sort of move on from it, saying, "Yeah, well, nice experience," and so on?
So it was a horrible experience. The only reason I finished was because I was worried about the embarrassment I would face in college, that I did not finish like a 10K race. That's the only reason I sort of ended up, motivating myself through that 12K to finish. But it didn't last too long. Like I, I mean, I, after I finished that race, I thought about it a bit, and I realized that in training, the maximum I'd ever run was 4 kilometers, approximately. So naturally, I ran 8 kilometers more than that. It had to go bad. So I decided to give it another shot and run a 10K a couple of months later. And I decided to, plan a little better and train a little better. Uh, and that 10K went a lot better. And and after that, I sort of started getting hooked.
It's interesting you mentioned that one of the reasons you finished it and pushed through was because of the embarrassment. Because at that point in colleges, at least, I don't know, I can't speak for anywhere else, but here in India, among your friends, embarrassment is such a big thing. It's
It
like,
is.
yeah, not getting selected for the football
Yeah.
team or coming up just short, or putting your goals out there and then not being able to make good on it. It's such a
Yeah.
major factor behind decision making.
Yeah.
Did that stay with you for long? This need to, I don't know, maybe appear a certain way among your peers or prove yourself as capable of something you put your mind to? Or, yeah, what was the journey in that part?
I think being embarrassed about running, it sort of evolved a lot through the years. So back in 2010, after my first race, I was not so worried about being embarrassed, by my classmates per se, but I running was still very new in the country. And I remember running around in, Nagpur and in sometimes in these small cities when I would go to visit my folks during like college break. And I would be running in these tiny little shorts, and people would laugh at me. You know how these guys come on bikes and they whistle and they make, like, I used to have all those kind of weird experiences, and I used to be a little conscious about what I was wearing, at least, because running was not like a cool thing back then. So that sort of embarrassment has stayed to some extent. Even now, I sort of have people who laugh at me on and off, if I'm running around in my tiny little shorts, because my shorts have gotten really tiny. So, but it's now I don't feel as self-conscious about that. So it's been embarrassment has sort of evolved over the years. And from a sporting perspective, I don't get embarrassed anymore, really. There's nothing like that doesn't exist now.
You were talking about how you got over the performance aspect, but the appearance, the aesthetic aspect of it kind of stuck with you for a little bit. And tell me a little bit about your journey in the years up to 2015. I gather that that's when you decided to go pro. So tell me a little
Yeah,
bit about
yeah.
what happened in those years.
All right. So it's the first 5 years, like you have mentioned, right? 2015 is when I decided to go sort of full time into the sport. So the first 5 years before that was all about learning, basically, for me. I did not know much about the sport. So I was just trying out new things, testing the waters, what kind of running I like, sort of finding my niche, right? So the first year was just a lot of 10-kilometer races for me. About a year or so after I started running, I did my first half marathon in Delhi, the Airtel Delhi half marathon. And then as soon as I read about that, I had come back to Bangalore after my semester break, and I read about the Bangalore Ultra, where people were running like 24 hours, and that sort of blew my mind. And I was like, oh man, like wow, 24 hours, people are running like 100 miles, and it's like going from Bangalore to Mysore. And I'm like, shit, that's these kind of distances are usually reserved for like the bus or the train and stuff. So it sort of excited me that that it is possible to do something so long on 2 feet, on your own 2 feet. So about around that time when I finished my first half, I decided to try 100K the year later, the Bangalore Ultra, basically. And I also felt the jump from the 10Ks that I was doing the previous year to the 21-kilometer was very easy. So, naturally, the way the distances progress is usually like after 21, you get to the marathon. So I just thought, since you're doubling things, doubling from a half marathon to a 42 would be really easy as well. So, let's skip that and go all the way to the 100. So that's what I ended up doing. And in 2012, and did my first 100, which was not a pleasant experience because, again, underprepared and things like that. And it was, yeah, I had decided after that, that I'll never do another 100. I'll stick to like the 21s. And that also didn't last too long. A couple of sort of months after my first 100, I was already like, what next? Which other 100 can I do? And I did another 100 in 2013. So back then, La Ultra was like the big sort of like event in India, that no Indian had ever run it. And Every Indian that I knew, spoke to about ultra running. Everyone was like, "Oh man, La Ultra, like that's a big deal." So I set my eyes sort of on La Ultra. At some point, I would, like to attempt it, and I signed up for it in 2014 and failed miserably. I dropped out at 49 kilometers. There's a checkpoint, and I dropped out. And that was the first time I not finished after starting it. So I remember, at 49 crying, and I was what? I was 18 or 19 when I did that. Oh no, yeah, I think I was 18 or 19 or 20. I'm losing track of my age. But yeah, so I remember being very sad and miserable and crying, and but I learned from that. That was sort of my first big failure that I had, and then I went back in 2016 and attempted La Ultra. And this time I attempted La Ultra sort of as a training run for another race that I was doing, Spartathlon. So it's sort of roughly been that way till 2015. Yeah.
The Bangalore Ultra, I think it was, it was 2008. I ran in 2008, and it was funny. I was not supposed to run or anything. I was working with a radio station in Bangalore, it was an FM radio station, and we were doing something called an outdoor broadcast, where you go there, you set up a booth, and you had to sort of flag the race off, and you do a little bit of commentary and some interviews and things like that. And but anyways, I just decided to turn up in like comfy clothing, like, just shorts and a t-shirt, because I just didn't feel like wearing anything else. And it was a little exciting for me looking at this. And I remember I reached the morning that the 25K was beginning. And through the night, the 100K runners were running. And I still remember there was this guy called Jacob, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob, who was doing the 100K, and he'd been running through the night, and I saw this, and it was just ridiculous. It was ridiculous, and the pace at which he was moving, it was it's hard to explain. You've run these distances, but when I saw it for the first time, it was almost like his body was just kind of trotting along.
Yeah, it's just going.
It's just going. I was looking at him, and I wasn't sure how he was going or what he really had in the tank, but he was just sort of like rolling through.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was supposed to flag that off, and I did, and just make a bit of an announcement. And then I was like, okay, it was just a media thing. And then I was like, man, I feel like running. And so I ran, and I had no practice at all. I mean, I used to run when I was a kid. I used to go for like 3-4K runs and stuff, but I had no practice at all. And I said, okay, fine, I'm going to run 25K. I was quite happy. I finished it, actually. It was like 3 hours and something. That was my timing. It was like horrible, but that's the extent of my ultra experience.
It's really cool that you just jumped into it and went for a run. Like that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. But coming back to 2014 La Ultra, that's an event about your career that's written about quite a bit. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this talk with you was to really sort of get into the mindset of a high functioning athlete, which I consider you to be. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of potential, but many of them don't fulfill that potential, or they don't end up kind of achieving their goals or ambitions. And in my opinion, much of that has to do with how they deal with failure and setbacks. Take me into 2014. How did you emotionally deal with that event of not being able to finish?
So the first, it was the first time I dropped out of a race, right? And I was pretty sad. So the first 3-4 days, 1 week or so of the whole race, because so when even if you do drop out, La Ultra is a race where like the 111K are the first finishers, and then you have people who are going on for 2 days, and then they have the event sort of a prize giving 2 days after the 111 finishes, and so you're there for like a good 3-4 days in the whole atmosphere of the event. and you can't run away from it, right? So that whole timeline that I was there in Leh for the event was, I mean, I was sad, right? I was like, oh man, the first time I have dropped out of a race. And Lal Trail was like, is a pretty pricey race, like not a very cheap race to get to, right? You have to commit in terms of a couple of like a week, 10 days of time, spending your time in Leh, acclimatizing, the price you pay for the entry, the price you pay for the stay. It's not, I mean, for a guy who's in college, just coming out of college, it's not a very cheap race to sort of, do. So that was another burden that I had, like I'd spent like 30 grand or something. And I was like, oh man, I've wasted all this money and I can see all these people running and finishing. And I was like, you just gave up and all these things going through my head. So the whole sort of week or so after around that event was all really sad. It's the timeline after the event where things sort of changed. I sort of took a step back. I mean, you can only do a certain amount of like that much crying, right? Like you can't really cry and be sad after a certain point. So I just took a step back and tried to understand what went wrong. Why did I not finish that race? Just try to figure out, what was the whole issue with the whole race that I had. Try to pinpoint stuff and things. And one thing I told myself after that was that, you're never going to drop out of a race again after this. So that was like a few takeaways that I had from the race. So yeah, basically then, so post the race, it's not like I ever thought of, not running and quitting and everything. I sort of just try to understand what went wrong and make sure I don't make those mistakes. So from when I look back at, dropping out at La Ultra, it was probably a good thing. I learned a lot from not finishing that race. I mean, because, before that, I'd finished everything and I'd done well. I'd won a couple of races. My ego was at an all-time high. So La Ultra sort of set me in place and, helped me sort of stay grounded and understand that sport. There's more to sport than just, finishing and doing well all the time. Yeah.
At a time like this, I feel your immediate circle of friends and your emotional support system matters a lot. I mean, speaking from climbing, when you've put a lot of effort into a project or a competition and you don't come off with the result that you wanted, you can either end up in a situation where the people around you feel like, after all this, he just didn't get it done. Or you can have the right set of people around you who really make you feel like you failed and it's okay. I'm there for you. You can come out of this. What was your support system like in terms of friends? Who could you go to and how did they react?
So amongst my friend circle, I was just this weirdo who's running a lot of distances and people were like, oh man, this guy is just running a lot. It was mostly my family, like mom, dad, my sister, like these are the guys who sort of, made the effort to understand what I've been doing. My dad has sort of, so Bangalore Ultra, my dad came there to see, what the hell is this, his son, like, running these crazy distances. He had never heard of as well, so he came to the race to sort of see what goes on. So my dad, my mom, my sister, these are the guys who've sort of always been there from the start. And ultra running, you sort of connect with people very easily in the sport. So people at La Ultra itself, whether it was Dr. Rajat, the race organizer, or other runners over there, I mean, I was this young little kid, but everyone else over there was probably in their 30, 35, 40, 50 age group, right? Who had a lot more experience in life and who shared that with me and sort of, told me, it's all right, man. Like, this is part of it. And it's part of the sport. And like, the fact that I could talk to a lot of these kind of guys and kept in touch with a lot of them after that as well, that helped for sure.
And it was the year after that you chose to go pro.
Yeah, 2015 is when I decided to go full. Like, not let's not say pro, but decided to do this full time.
Yeah, we'll come to that.
Because
Okay, but you decided to make running the complete focus of your life, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep.
What catalyzed that? Because you could have gone in two different directions. You could have said,
Yeah.
this is a gamble, this is really hard. There's every chance that I can put in a lot of effort and maybe I'll finish again. Or maybe, is it actually worth putting my entire life in this basket? So what really made you take that decision?
It was not an easy decision for multiple reasons. Back in 2015, trail running, ultra running globally was not really a sport that you could do full time. Like there were probably like a handful of people who were doing this full time, like globally. Forget about India. I remember, talking to friends, not Indians, friends in the US and other ultra runners abroad, and they were like, nobody's making money in this sport. Like, shouldn't be doing this full time. So it was not an easy decision to decide to do this full time. One big reason why I decided to sort of get into this full time was one, I wanted to do really well in the sport, and I wanted to be not good in India, but be competing and be among the best in the world, right? That was my goal. So I felt for that I needed to sort of just focus on this one thing. Second, I could sort of see what was going on globally in trail running, right? I had been following it for a few years. I had gone into you know, once I came across the sport, trail running in 2013, I started reading what was happening 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what was going on at that time. And I could see the way the sport was sort of growing. And I just had a gut feeling that, you know what, at that time, globally, nobody was earning money, or a handful of people were probably earning money. But that would change very soon. It was a gamble because now I guess there are quite a few people who are running and doing trail running full time and earning fair amount of money. So it was basically two things. One, I saw a big sort of growth curve in the whole sport globally, and second, my focus was to want to be the best in the world in the sport. And yeah.
And what were your immediate steps after this? Okay, so you made this decision, you want to put all your energies into running. Now what? What did you do to reorganize your life?
All right. So I had decided to want to do trail running full time, and I had not yet done a trail race. So, yeah, not the
Finished a trail
smartest.
race, you mean?
No, not yet. I
Not
not
yet
even
done.
participated.
Okay. That was an
I not
outro.
even participated. Yeah, trail running, right? Different sport, sort of a different sport. I had not even done a trail run event, and I wanted to sort of get into it. So, so the first step was So I was working between 2014 and 2015, and in Bangalore in a startup. About 5-6 months into the startup, I sort of felt that I want to get into running full time, and I realized that I was not running as much as I could and as much as I wanted. That whole year 2014-15 was a very low year in terms of running for me. Not the sort of I'd never ran as much as I could. I've never ran as well as I could. I wanted to do a lot more running, basically. So around 5-6 months into working there, I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave my job and get into running full time. So I didn't leave right away. I just told myself, hang around for the next 5-6 months, save up all the money you can, and then get into it. So the next 5-6 months, I sort of used to save up money to try and understand what kind of running I wanted to do, try and understand how I would go about trail running. Um, there was not a single trail race in India. At that time, at least not a single mountain trail race at that time. So yeah, there was a huge learning curve. I knew there was a big lag in what I wanted to do and what was actually happening in India. So yeah, a lot of things going on in my mind. I tried to understand as much as I could. I used basically 5-6 months till May 2015 to sort of understand and figure out a way forward, which didn't really work out. I understood nothing and figured out nothing. In the end, I just left my job and shifted to Manali. So I had signed up for a race called CCC. It's one of the biggest 100K races in the world in terms of participation, in terms of the number of elite runners that come there. So it's a very competitive race, and I decided to run that. I had signed up for it. So May I came to Manali to train for that, and that race was in August 2015. So I did not really think far ahead back then. I just thought about, let's get the first race done. Let's get till August first. Let's just focus on that. Let's not think 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the line. Let's just go sort of baby steps. I had saved up sort of enough money to fund myself to France, and a little help from family as well. And yeah, I basically did that. And then I went to France for the race, and I saved up money from the budget that I had for France to continue living as well. So like I had a budget, I don't remember exactly, about a lakh 20 or something like that. I sort of lived on a shoestring budget in Europe. I was there for a week, 10 days or so, and lived on a shoestring budget, just had sandwiches and yeah, like less than 10 euros a day kind of food. Not ideal stuff for when you're leading up, building into a 100K race. But I did that and saved up money from that so I could sort of continue living after CCC as well in India. And yeah, I sort of did that. Just took it one step at a time, like very baby steps every few months. I just thought like 2-3 months ahead, mostly.
I'm glad you're so open about this, your budgets and what your expenses were, because sometimes there's a real gap in media when they represent the stories of athletes. They say, okay, fine, so Kieren went to France, he ran this, he came back, and he lives in Manali, but there's a major question mark in the minds of a lot of athletes saying, okay, so how does he come up with the money? How much does this cost? That is honestly the biggest question for most athletes.
So I'll tell you this. So I was here in Manali for 2-3 months training for CCC, and I lived in Chenag, and I lived in basically other side of a cow shed in a little room where I gave the landlady 1,000 rupees rent for a month, which included food. I mean, so that was my budget basically. And once in a way, I would treat myself with a pizza. Like I probably 2 or 3 pizzas in 3 months that I was in Manali, to treat myself. Back then, I had nothing, like no watch, no like one trail running shoe. I had no idea about climbing up a mountain, running down. I didn't know what 1,000 meters gain was. All my training, I had no clue what I was doing.
Jeez, man, this is remarkable. It also sounds so similar to the story of climbing in India, because I think now there's a lot more knowledge in terms of training because of the internet and because of the number of coaches putting content out there and such. But so much of it was just trial and error, the lifestyle, training, and many people who started before me and even kind of in my generation sometimes have just trained themselves into injury because, they just thought, okay, hit as hard as possible, as much as possible. That's it. There's not been much attention still in India around nutrition and how to eat, around hard training. I relate at a level to what you've been through because I know climbing, especially bouldering, has been through a rather similar journey, and it's kind of coming out of the dark a little bit now, but it's still so hard. Europe must have opened your eyes for sure.
A lot. Big time.
What were some of your takeaways?
So for one, I learned how to read an elevation graph of a race. Like I remember looking at the elevation profile of CCC, like, 10K up here, it's 1,000 meters down here, up here. I remember looking at that before CCC and having no clue what it was, like, because I had nothing to relate to understand, and like what I was doing in Manali, right? After Europe, I learned that. Like I knew what a 1,000-meter climb in 5-6 kilometers looked like. I could see these. Like I went through that whole sort of, climbing up, climbing down. I sort of started understanding that a lot better. all these friends who I had in the ultra running space globally, I sort of discussed CCC with them. And one feedback I got from everyone consistently was that take it easy on the downhills, because running downhill is easy and fun, but it's really hard on your quads. So, don't sort of run too hard and blow out your quads. So I had no clue about this stuff in training. During the race, the first climb went by pretty smoothly. The next, after the climb, it's a fairly long descent, like a 5-6K descent. I remember running down that and thinking, man, what were these guys talking about? Like, you know what? I'm loving it. I'm just going to bomb down all the descents. I paid for it like barely 50K into the race. Like I after about 50, 60K, I realized what people meant by, taking it easy on the descents. So that was a big takeaway for me, at least. Second, one other thing was just, I was just exposed to the whole, the level of the sport globally. You know, till CCC, I had just been reading about it. I had been watching videos. I had been reading articles, and that's all that sort of I knew about the sport globally. After that race in Chamonix, I was sort of firsthand exposed to it, right? I could see what the level was. I could see how the best guys were running. I was exposed to just the level of the sport outside India. I mean, UTMB sort of spoiled every other trail race for me, because UTMB is like a huge carnival, 1 week long festival where, you have thousands and thousands of people over there. And I sort of, after that race, I thought every trail race outside India is like that. Not all of them are as big and as grand as UTMB. But yeah, one other thing was, after that race, I decided I will not, in the lead up to any ultra, I'll not just live off sandwiches. I'll cater for a better budget for food.
You spoke about basically understanding the level globally, right? Where it was at. Now, did this encourage you or did this discourage you, looking at the difference? And yeah.
Oh, encouraged me big time. I was like crazy motivated after that. Big time. Yeah, it encouraged me like a lot. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because, in climbing, sometimes, again, this changes from person to person, but if you come from an ecosystem where, okay, among the 10 or 15 people that you climb with, you are one of the strongest, and then all of a sudden you go into a competition, or at least you go to an area outside and you realize that, man, climbing 8A or 8A plus is just really no big deal. There's just a lot of people doing it. There's people who would be motivated by that, saying, oh, okay, that means I can reach 8B, I can reach 8B plus. There are regular human beings doing it. It's a possible thing. Or at the same time, you can walk away from that experience saying, well, what's the point? I mean, the level is so high already. I want to understand the difference between the two mindsets. For you, what motivated you?
So, when I wanted to do this full time, my aim was to be the best in the world, right? And I think and I would have been disappointed if I was already very good. I think that would have been pretty sad. Like, yeah. I went with a fairly open mind, right? Like, it was just learning for me. And I went there to experience, to learn, to understand how to get better. I didn't go there with any notion about me being a good runner of any sort, right? One thing I always felt uh, was that I knew the running that I was doing and the level of running in India, in ultra running, in trail running, was not very high. I mean, you can compare, like, if you look at races like Bangalore Ultra and the winning times, and you look at a similar 100K outside India and the winning times, there's a pretty stark difference. So I knew that there is quite a bit of difference. So I did not think that just because I'm winning races in India, I was any good. I knew I was not very good. So I mean, I never really thought about myself being any good of an athlete. I just was winning a few races, and that's it. But I knew I had a huge sort of growth curve. Yeah.
That's when I told you that I consider you a bit of a model athlete. This is one of the aspects that I've always looked up to in you, because from the first time I met you and, the few times we've climbed together and chatted, I see a person who's got a bit of a learning mindset, not a person who's looking at those around him in his ecosystem and being like, yeah, well, I'm the top dog over here, or I'm the best and I'm a bit of a thing. I have my own Wikipedia page, which you do. I realized when I was just reading up, I was like, wow, Kieren has his own wiki page. This means he's right.
No, man. Like, I think I never had any of these things airs about myself. I still don't. Like, I know I have a big learning curve ahead of me, and I just feel. I mean, I'm just disappointed that I'm not able to progress as fast as I would have liked to. But I know where I already know where I need to reach.
If we could take where you want to reach, you have an idea of that, and where you are, what do you feel are the things that are lacking within you and then without you?
Lacking within me.
Within you as an athlete, physically, the kind of things that you feel you have control over and that you can work on, and then some of the things outside in your ecosystem in India, in Manali, in the space of running in India that could help facilitate this growth.
All right. So I think from a progress perspective, I know what I'm lacking in terms of how to improve my running. Like, I know I'm not a very good climber. Like, I can't go up a mountain as well as the best in the world are doing. I know that's a weakness, so I know I have to work on that. Right? There are a lot of sort of singular weaknesses of this sort in running, in racing, in training that I know I'm missing out on. So I keep working on it. It's sort of consistent. You just keep at it. Pick one thing, work at it. What is not in my control is a proper trail running ecosystem, right? Which doesn't really exist in India. I mean, what you have in Europe, what you have in US, and I mean, Hong Kong has a really good trail running community. These are things that I can't control, right? I'm not part of I don't have access to running around with the best runners in the world like some of my friends do, right? That is a big lag, I mean, you'll understand, right? Like, whenever you do climb with someone who's better, naturally you work, your mindset is different, you work differently, right? I mean, there's only so much you can keep doing on your own, but there's a different psych, I guess, if you are with somebody who's better than you. And that's something that I definitely lack, right? Having access to gear, options of gear, having access to, like, Manali. You can't get a good physio in Manali. Support system in terms of just generally being able to fund yourself, support yourself. I mean, these are all lacking over here generally in the sport, right? Yeah.
Let's come to funds. And because I feel this is a topic a lot of people listening, especially here in India, can benefit from. You are currently sponsored by a number of companies. And I want to basically talk a little bit about sponsorship, because you seem to have a good and steady relationship with some of these sponsors. And I've seen some of your videos and your work for them. It looks really good. It looks professional. So I'm going to throw a tough question out, and then you can choose to answer it or not, which is,
all right,
in order to be a full-time athlete, what do you think is a reasonable sum of money that you need to have coming in every month? And I don't mean, pizzas every day and, fancy dinners every day. Essentially, to have a decent place to live, to take care of your nutrition and have access to the gear that you need, and not be strapped for physio or medical care if you need it. let's work with a number, because I feel that makes the whole thing a lot more tangible.
So I think it's hard to put a number, in the sense, I think it would be a different number if it would be just me living within India, and a different number if I would include wanting to live outside India where I could train better. Right? It would be very different. So and living outside India in amongst people who I can train with, who living in a community that where you can just keep improving. Having access to that will have a very different cost. So yeah, and the importance of it, right? Like, imagine you just climbing in Australia and the best gym with every other person doing an 8A. Yeah, and so that has a very different cost. So, but I'll probably, it's easier for me to put a cost to just being within India, at least for me being within Manali. I think if we had to be in the city, there would be a very different cost again, just because cost of living is so much higher. But I guess the few basic things that I need sorted is food, like good nutrition. So it comes at a cost, even if I do have easy access to a lot of clean food, a lot of local produce. Even though I do have access to that, it comes at a cost, right? It's not the cheapest sort of thing to sort of pursue. Rent of living is another cost. Having access to gear in India, it's not the easiest to get any kind of gear in any outdoor sport, pretty much, right? So you always have to sort of import a lot of the stuff. So having a good sort of access to gear and being able to buy it, it's hard, man. I don't know, like, I think, and this, let's not include, would you want to include travel for races outside India?
That's up to you. I mean, and we don't even have to really. Okay, let's forget travel to races outside India, because then that becomes a variable which has a lot of other things going on, right?
A lot of variables. Yeah, exactly.
Way too many variables. It's difficult. I mean, I just wanted to get into a conversation about sponsorship and put out over there some sort of number that I feel is worth being in the public domain, about how much an elite full-time athlete requires to pursue their craft decently. It can be a range. It's, if you're more comfortable with that.
I think 5 lakhs is all right.
A year, you mean?
A year, 5 lakhs is all right. I mean, it's still not on the highest. It's lower to mid sort of range. And I mean, I have the freedom to, get certain kind of gear. I have the freedom to splurge on really clean food. Like yeah.
That's fair. That's great, because I'll tell you why I asked that question. And I'm genuinely sorry if, it made you feel uncomfortable or something.
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. I'm pretty open to talking about anything, man. It's all right.
That's great. The reason I asked is when you read articles about getting a sponsorship or how to go about conducting yourself once you're a sponsored athlete, the things you need to do, oftentimes they're all quite ambiguous. They just speak in rather vague terms of be a good role model, represent your brands well, interact with your community, this and that. They don't necessarily give you they don't put down hard numbers or hard facts of these are the different brackets of sponsorship. This is what you can get. This is what you can't get. This is how much you can make and you can't make. And for me, a figure that I had in mind was about 50K a month. So give or take something like
approximately, approximately 5. That's like 6 lakhs.
That's like 6. So let's just say in that range of 40 to 50, I think, is where you could live respectably, pay rent for a decent place feed
At least
yourself
you will
well.
not worry about things
Yeah.
in terms of money.
And the mental bandwidth that opens up is
Exactly. It's
it's priceless.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. You can't add a value to that. Like that's what how my mind space is always divided, right? Train, market, money. Plan your logistics for the year. Yeah.
And there's people who are naturally good at this. They just have a way in terms of marketing and in terms of being able to get opportunities and things for themselves. But there are others who are phenomenal athletes, but this is not their core area. They're just not that good in the marketing game, or they have certain disadvantages in terms of where they come from, their background and their backstory, which puts them, which I don't know how to say this, either it gives others the edge or puts them below the bar or whatever. And it's often sad that these kind of parameters make people suffer. Because if you are incredibly good at something that you're doing and you're willing to put in all that dedication, um, yeah, to have the marketing and the money and all of that eat into your mind space, and then go and also be forced to deliver results and or be at a certain level, it's a lot. It's a lot of.
It is. Yeah. So I'll tell you one thing. Like when I decided to do this full time, right? I knew one thing. I don't have like I never had a big bank balance or anything, right? So I knew one thing. Like I did not want to do any kind of crowdfunding at any point. Uh, because that's something I keep seeing a lot. I've always seen it over the years. A lot of people have been doing crowdfunding. I don't know why, but for some reason, I was against crowdfunding for myself. I'm open to crowdfunding. Let's say like if for the Indian team when we are going for the trail running championships, But I've never been too excited about wanting to do crowdfunding for myself for my races that I want to go for. So from day one thing that I had in mind was how do I reach out to brands? That's the only way I learn, right? So how do I reach out to brands? What do I need to do? So I've always been sort of focused on this. What do I need to do with a brand? Who to reach out to? Who are the right people? How do I sell myself? What does the brand need from me? What can I do for the brand? Other than, just social media posts. I was not on Instagram till 2016 or something. So, other than social media, what can I do? Doing talks in their offices, doing workshops with their employees, doing whatever, So I've always sort of been thinking about that. And because I knew that I'm getting into something getting into a space that doesn't really exist, right? Trail running full time, hard, doesn't really exist in India. So, who else is going to do these things for me? I have to do it for myself. My dad does a lot of it, but he's sort of like the reason why I'm able to do it, right? He, in between for like 2-3 years, was sort of like my manager. Like, I would connect with people, he would connect with people, we would reach out, we would be doing these things. Um, yeah. So, I realized this early on itself that nobody else is going to do this for me. I have to do it for myself. Just sort of buckle up and figure it out. Yeah.
And what have you learned? Is there a fixed channel if you need to reach out to brands for sponsorship? Because it's such a mystery. The whole thing, in my opinion, seems so clouded and closed and very networky. You kind of have to know someone who knows someone who knows someone else, and right place, right time. I don't know.
It is all of that and also none of that. In the sense, how do you network if you don't start somewhere, right? I didn't have any contacts when I started off in 2016. I knew nobody. I figured it out. Like I reached out however I could. LinkedIn. Reach out to one person, reach out to 10 people. I still do. I still reach out and to random people from various brands, cold call them, and I know when I'm cold calling them, it's not going to work out. I know it already. In the sense, because I know the space doesn't really exist, but you have to do that, right? You have to reach out. How else do you build relationships? How else do you start and build a network, right? How else do you get to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, right? You have to sort of make that effort. So yeah, I mean, it has paid off. Like some people I'm in touch with for a couple of years. Some people it hasn't paid off being in touch with them in terms of an association, but I'm still in touch with people. Never hurts to be in touch with people.
So over these years, have you figured out a certain pattern, a person to reach out to if you want to start this conversation?
So usually people in the marketing space, so anyone in the marketing department of a brand, ideally try to find someone who knows that person. Yeah. So usually that's the way. But if you can't find someone, just reach out anyway. Anyone. And, like I've reached out to HR people and been like, I am so-and-so, this is what I do. I'd love to try and have a chat with someone in the marketing department. Can you, connect me? And sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. At least I get to connect with the marketing guy, and maybe the association doesn't work out, but at least I've connected with the right person. But yeah.
When you say you've reached out, over what platform is this?
Everywhere. I have sent friend requests. I have searched for, Google this person and try to figure out ways to get their number, cold call them, LinkedIn, Instagram, LinkedIn, everything, like everything, wherever the person and people exist. Yeah.
And have you found, certain platforms and certain methods to be more effective than others?
LinkedIn is usually easier to reach to find people. But in my experience, even LinkedIn, I've dropped messages. It very rarely get a reply. Like 100 messages, 4-5 replies. Yeah, but it works out. You never know. Like I recently connected with a guy actually 2 guys over LinkedIn. Yeah. But you're building a network, right? Like now 2 people from 2 new brands know who I am and know what I do.
Wow. It's just a lot of keep throwing darts and then something or the other will stick.
But you got to keep at it. I mean, you can't just be like, nothing works out and not make an effort. Like you got to just keep at it like everything else.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It has been very disappointing naturally, but then I'm also like, what, if I sit around and do nothing, I can't complain. At least, I have to make that effort. And what else? I don't know anything else, right? Like what else do I do other than making that effort all the time?
To me, something that comes to mind is my previous conversation was with Mohit Oberoi. And he was telling me how in the early 90s, the process was give or take the same. He just landed up in Mumbai and he was knocking on the doors of Air India to try and get sponsored for a ticket to go to the UK for a climbing meet that he was invited for. And it's still so... It's still rough.
Still very same. Yeah, very much
it's still
the same.
So,
also in the space that we are in, there is no system for. Probably things would get a little better for climbing to some extent because it's been included in the Olympics. Just because, to some extent, but I don't think that much yet. Ultra running is still like very random.
I don't know about the Olympics because, definitely globally it's gaining a lot of recognition and a lot of traction. It's just a sport that people pay more attention to. Where I think it will get easier is more parents in India will be willing to put their kids into climbing and support them over there and invest their energies because they think it's a sport that leads somewhere. It has that end goal, so to speak, and a grade or a benchmark route is not the end goal. Representing your country in the Olympics, winning a medal, that sort of thing holds a lot of prestige over here.
Yeah, true.
But stepping out of climbing now, if I just imagine I'm a marketing manager in some company, and if I were to ask you, an athlete, how my company can make the entire sponsorship game easier, less cryptic for athletes, what would be your advice to me? So this is your chance to customize it.
Yeah, I think for starters, it would be easier to have a inroad. Like if I had to go to X company, let's say a sporting company only, and just as for any athlete to just have that inroad, like to get in touch with someone from the brand, even if it's not the right person, but just some person that, I am an athlete and this is what I do. For starters, that would be a great sort of step, right? Because half the battle is just finding the right person and the contact of the right person, right? You get it, you don't get it. Sometimes you get the wrong contact, whatever. So I think just sort of making that barrier to entry to that brand a little easier for starters is one great step. Second, I guess from a marketing perspective, one thing that I have at least noticed is in the current situation, everything is social media based, revolves a lot around just that. And I think brands, associating with the brand is not like, as an athlete, I need to know and understand what can I do for the brand. But I also think brands need to understand how to utilize the athletes well. Not just the guys who are in cricket and, paying them big bucks. Utilizing, like for me, I'm open to doing so many things at such a small cost, right? And the brand can utilize me for a lot of these things. So understanding how to use the athlete better, other than just expecting, that we are getting an athlete on board and they'll post stuff on social media, is not, I don't think is not good enough. I think, trying to do more. Like I wish the brands exploited me to, use them to better use me to market them what the brand or their products, whatever, better, right? Not just expect me to put out a post or things like that. Like, I want to create content with brands. So that's like one of the things that I try to, when I'm reaching out to brands, and tell them that this is the kind of content I'm creating, whether it's the video or or images or whatever, I want to do more of these things using your products, So trying to understand that is also probably a great step. At least one thing that I've realized is in a lot of sports like ours, climbing, probably trail running, I don't know, like kayaking, in a lot of these kind of sports, I think you can get to work with a wide range of people from various backgrounds, which I feel is great for a brand and also value for money. I'm not going to be a very expensive athlete for a brand to sort of work with, at least not at this point, right? And there are a lot of people in various sports who are in a similar boat, right? Who are doing great, who have great sort of community, sort of connections that a brand can utilize, right? So things like that, I guess, for starters to change.
Yeah, I entirely agree with you on the inroads thing. I think it's the barrier to entry is just too much. You could have a really good expedition in mind, anything,
Yeah.
A training plan, a goal, a vision, or something in mind, but it's just the number of question marks in terms of how do I even get this across to someone? It's just there are so many. The barrier to entry is so high that often these ideas never end up making it to the other side. And then companies are sitting on the other side saying, well, there's nothing going on in the scene. So, we don't, what's the point of investing? And the second thing that I've noticed is, and I can't speak of this from a financial perspective for a company, but one of the things I've come to understand is that there's really immediate need of a return on investment. It's like if Kieren has a good idea for let's just say an endeavor or a film that he wants to make or a workshop that he wants to do, immediately it comes to what's the return on investment. If you give us this, what are we going to get back? And unfortunately, with content and with building a culture and an ecosystem, it is never like that. It's not a physical product where the second you put it in, you're going to get some sort of returns out, but you are becoming a thought leader, or you are getting into a set of sentiments and sensibilities that you otherwise had no access to. And it would be nice to have companies who have people that can see this.
True. Yeah. You're right. Like, I think, I mean, I don't know if there's nobody's at fault in this thing. I mean, we are in a space which is very niche, and I mean, it's like my job to market the space better. But it's like, starting off is where it's always hard starting off, right? Probably be easier in the future. Probably, I don't know.
It's like it's like an awkward relationship where you can, it's hard because both sides don't entirely understand each other, and as you said, it's no one's fault.
I mean,
at all.
Like, all I can do from from where I am is make that effort. I mean, if I don't make that effort, I don't even have the right to complain about it, right? I should make that effort, and I have to consistently make that effort. And I mean, this is not something new, right? Like, I knew this would be the scene when I decided to do this full time. So it's not like I didn't expect it. I mean, is it harder than I expected? Not really. It's as hard as I expected. Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm lucky I'm able to do this and survive and sort of still and figuring it out, basically, somehow.
Speaking of effort, and speaking of what we can give companies for sponsorships and things like that, content is obviously the thing that people want quite a lot.
Content is king.
Yeah. Apparently. And I just want to say your film with foreplay of Friendship Peak, your speed ascent, was remarkable.
Yeah.
It was absolutely spectacular. It was atmospheric. It was there weren't that many distracting elements. It was proper world-class storytelling.
Thanks, Tran. Yeah, like, I think the guys here did a pretty cool job in a very, very short span of time, and I'm pretty glad it turned out that way. And that's not even the main piece. There's another piece coming out soon. So,
when I saw that video, I felt it also represented your personality and your ethos as an athlete pretty well. And sometimes in adventure filmmaking, that doesn't happen. You end up with a kind of quiet, reclusive athlete in a piece of media that's just really blaring and boom and just not in sync with that person's sensibility. But this one really hit the spot. It felt like Kieren, It felt like who you are as a person. Can you just take me a little bit into how it all came together?
Long story. So
the media part of it, at least.
The media part of it.
Yeah. What was your role in creatively designing that video?
All right. So, I'll go a little back in time. So before all the running started, mountaineering was what I was really interested in. It didn't happen for various reasons, financial and time being the two most important sort of things. And I got into running right? College and everything. So when I got into trail running, one of the things I wanted to do and wanted to sort of get into was attempting things like friendship. So it's not something new that happened, this year. I have been probably sort of in and out thinking of friendship or doing peaks of this sort in this sort of style for since I think 2014 or something, for years now. So yeah, so I had been sitting on specifically friendship for at least like 4 years, 4 or 5 years, yeah. When I started getting close to actually attempting friendship only last year in October, when I after Ultra Half last year, and then I ended up getting sick. We came out after Ultra Half. I got sick. The film team, we all ended up getting sick. So friendship didn't happen. The weather, we went into the winters. It started snowing, so didn't happen. This year, with the current situation of the world sort of being on at a sort of stop, with no travel, nothing. I decided, you know, March itself, I had an idea, I had a sense that I'm not going to be racing this year. So I was like, let's focus on finally doing these things that I want to do. So friendship kind of stuff. And friendship is just a stepping stone for me. Like it's not, it's, I knew it could happen. Like I was not, when I went into it, never went thinking, can we do this? Can we not? For me, it was sort of done. I have been dreaming of this for so many years that in my head, I knew it's going to happen. It was all about just executing it finally. One big reason why it also sort of has been a little delayed is because I knew I wanted to also try and market this. For the same reason, because the fact that I have been doing this for years, I understand the importance of the marketing bit side of things, right? So I have been sort of also holding back. I was like, we will do it and we'll make a good movie and we'll talk about it. Like, let's not, I mean, I can just go and do it quietly as well. But in the larger scheme of things, I was wanting to make a bigger impact and everything. So having and documenting the whole sort of project was an important part of this for me personally as well. The fact that I had access to a team, the guys, all the boys at 4Play, it made life easier, right? Like we all live here, we are all in sync mentally. Um, with, I mean, it's important for me to be able to sort of trust the people doing this as well, right? So the fact that we are all mentally in sync, in sort of the same sort of headspace and everything, makes life a lot easier. So the filming part of things was definitely important, right? The reason we put out a piece immediately, well, not immediately, but fairly early on, was mainly because it was more of a piece to sort of like prove that I've actually done this visually. That was one important sort of part of it. The other was also, it was very fresh in our minds, in people's minds, in the whole space. So we were like, you know what? Let's put out a short piece right away. So Prashant, he basically sat, probably one of the fastest pieces he's ever put out. 2 days, 48 hours or something. He pretty much sat straight to work on this. Um, we we had two options for the video. One was with an audio and me talking about my ideas and my thoughts and everything about, the mountaineering space and the trail running space and all of this in India. But personally, I preferred the piece that's basically been put out, mainly for the reason that it was very raw. Like there's no distraction. All you see is what I'm doing, right? There's no, there's no me talking all sorts of nonsense about mountaineering and running and, pushing limits and nothing like that. It's just what I'm doing. And that's what I love about the piece. Like the fact that it's just all you see is what's happening. So if you watch the whole piece, there are timestamps. Every piece of footage has a timestamp. So that's the reason, like we were putting things out so that it's also used, because people were making a little noise here and there about me doing this and, how can you do it? It's not possible, and things like that. So it was also sort of to put it out for some of those guys. Yeah.
It's unfortunate that, you have to prove or answer to certain people and, put it out in order to be like, oh, hey, here's the proof. But I'm so glad that that didn't dampen the effect of the final product, because it's brilliant.
So I think so the aim was not the proof, it was part of it, but it was not the aim. Like, I was clear from the start that I did this basically for myself. I don't feel the need that I need to prove it to anyone. I mean, I'm not going to hide anything. Everything I've done is out there. I recorded it on my watch. It's out on a public domain. If anyone needs proof, anyone actually wants to dig in, it's not going to be that hard to actually put in that effort. And I was also like, we will be putting out a film, we will be putting out a piece. So if people are satisfied with it, they're satisfied. If people are not satisfied, they're not satisfied. I did it basically because I wanted to do it. And it doesn't matter if people think that, I didn't do it or whatever. Like, yeah. But, the fact that we wanted to, put it out, it was a added value that it was going to be a proof. And the fact that the hype was sort of built up and we wanted to, utilize that and everything. So yeah, we put out a cool piece and yeah, pretty happy with the way it turned out.
Oh, really? It's so much more than cool. I mean, my late congratulations to everyone who was involved in this effort. I'm quite looking forward to the bigger movie that you have coming, though.
It's not going to be that much bigger. It's going to be probably like probably 10 minutes longer, but it's a little more detail about, and this will be a little more probably me talking all sorts of nonsense about my thoughts and, giving gyan and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
When can we expect that?
I don't know. We just started working on it today only.
Okay.
Yeah, probably a month at least. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely chat. I have so much more on my mind, but that's kind of all we have time for this. So much more to dig in. And to whoever is listening today, if you wondered why we didn't talk about Kieren's achievements, it's because Kieren was kind of clear that he didn't want to, just go on about his achievements. And I wanted to make this chat a little bit more of a focus, or rather a little bit more of a trip into his mind and his mindset, his way of thinking and dealing with certain pressure points.
Things I have done, whatever I've done is over, man. Like, I've moved on from it, and like, it's boring for me. So I'm glad we had a different kind of conversation, and I'm so thanks for that. Like, super excited about it. Yeah.
And thank you for being so open. There's not a lot of athletes, there's not a lot of people who would just want to really speak about how much rent they pay and how much they expect to be earning. And then, some really personal moments, which you've really put a lot on the table. So thank you for that.
All right. No worries at all. Like, I was expecting a lot more detail and personal stuff. I was like, it was fairly comfortable.
Okay, good. So the next time we talk, I'll try to go even deeper and dig into a real discomfort zone. So cool. Kieren, again,
thanks.
Thank you so much. And talk to you soon.
Definitely, Dylan. Thank you so much. Take care, man. Stay safe there.
You too, man. See you. So it turns out we weren't done when we were done. I'll tell you why we're doing this re-interview, so to speak. Kieren called me soon after, and he actually wanted to go even more into detail about how he lives as a sponsored athlete. He told me that I was actually prepared for questions like how much money do you make and how much money, how do you save that money and how do you fund events. He was expecting more personal questions, more detail, and he basically called me and said, I want to put even that out over there. So this is a bit of a bonus segment. So Kieren, welcome back after our 10 minutes break. Okay. All right. So I'll get to the subjects you wanted to talk about. Sponsorships.
Yep.
Straightforward. can you live out of sponsorships? The ones that you have?
I am basically living out of sponsorship. I don't have the last time a sponsor paid me was last year, but I knew when I got, the Volney, they used to pay me. And when I knew I had them, I knew they also won't be there forever. So I never blew up my money and basically just spent it as wisely as I possibly could. And basically been living off that. But also, since I'm not associated with them since last year, I've had small gigs here and there that I keep doing as well. So, being an event ambassador for a race here and there, doing a talk here and there, small things like that. But yeah, but of course, yeah, you can live off. I've basically been living off sponsorship money.
You're associated with a number of companies. Is every sponsor association a financial one? Do you get a salary of all your sponsors?
No. So the only association that I've had financially till now has been with Volney. Yeah.
Then what is the nature of your association with the others? What do they expect out of you?
It's different. Like I've had at the basis of it is usually product sponsorship, but brands do come out and help out if I really have asked them, and they can, if they can, like helping me with a flight ticket or travel for a race here and there. That has happened as well. But usually, majorly, it's like product sponsorship.
Free gear, essentially. They give you a certain number of things. I know that sounds horribly crass, but I was just trying to make this as unjargoned out as possible. Now, let's say you're competing in a very specific event. You want to go to the UTMB.
Yeah.
This clearly comes with a certain amount of costs. If you aren't making money, a salary from your sponsors, then how do you go about raising the funds required for this?
So, every year for this has been very, very different for me, right? The first year was out of savings. The second year was with a little help from someone. The third year has been different. So it's been very different sort of every year. The few years in between was with the money I earned through Volney. So it's been there's not been a standard sort of way, that I've sort of followed every year. Like this year, the way I was going to fund it this year was I had a whole sort of a filming plan around. I was going to do UTMB, so I had a full filming plan, and I was going to film and document what I was doing and the way I was doing UTMB, and fund the filming, and then through that fund my travel as well. So that's how I was going about it this year. I have tried to also just sort of create content for a brand around my travels. Just trying to figure out ways how could I sort of get a brand on board to work with me and, interest them in whatever fashion I could, which is usually revolving around some kind of content.
Well, cool. I think you couldn't have made it more clear. Yeah, to be honest. And this slipped my mind earlier, but for anyone watching or listening in, Kieren's actually put up a highlight on his Instagram profile about how to become a sponsored athlete and how to work with sponsors. And I found it to be some of the most useful material out there in the Indian adventure sports space. So yeah, please go and check it out. And we definitely should do a second talk, not just on sponsorship, but just, going into brutal detail about other aspects of your career and your life. Well, anyways, thank you for the re-interview. I really, really appreciate your honesty. Well, that's it for now.